She wasn't born into wealth. She wasn't even born with a trust fund. But Anna Sorokin, soon to be known as Anna Delvey, walked into New York City in 2013 with nothing but a suitcase, a borrowed name, and a conviction that she could become whoever she wanted to be. This wasn't just confidence. This was delusion dressed as destiny. By the time she vanished from a Soho hotel room in 2017, leaving behind unpaid bills and shattered trust, she had convinced billionaires, art dealers, and even Vanity Fair that she was a German heiress worth $60 million. How? By mastering the oldest trick in the con artist's playbook. Pretend until you believe. Anna didn't just fake it. She lived it. Every detail of her persona was meticulously crafted. She changed her last name from Sorokin to Delvey, a nod to the French word délivre, meaning freed, to sound aristocratic. She told people her family owned a Luxembourg-based foundation that managed billions. She claimed she was building a $100 million arts club in Manhattan. None of it was true, but the lies weren't reckless. They were strategic. She studied the habits of the ultra-rich, the way they spoke, the way they spent, the way they existed in a world where money was invisible. She knew that in New York's elite circles, proof was rarely demanded. A well-tailored suit, a Rolex, and a casual mention of my family's estate were often enough to open doors. Trust is easier to gain than you think, she seemed to whisper to the city itself. And the city, dazzled by the illusion, let her in. But this wasn't just about deception. It was about desperation. Anna's early life in Russia and Germany was ordinary, bordering on bleak. She worked as an intern at Vogue and Condé Nast, scraping by on a modest salary. Yet she refused to accept that reality. Instead, she began spending money she didn't have, charging $10,000 dinners to credit cards, booking suites at the Standard Hotel, and convincing friends to cover her rent. When her savings ran dry, she didn't panic. She doubled down. She created fake bank statements, forged documents, and even set up a shell company to launder her lies. The more extravagant the lie, the more people believed her. Why? Because in a city obsessed with hustle culture, her audacity was mistaken for ambition. Fake it till you make it wasn't just a mantra, it was a license to lie. And then there were the near misses. The time she tried to withdraw $100,000 from a bank and was told her account didn't exist. The time she promised a friend a $10,000 loan and vanished for weeks. Each time, she didn't crumble. She improvised. She'd apologize with a laugh, spin a new story, and move on. The key was never to show doubt. If she hesitated, even for a second, the illusion would shatter. So she didn't. She became so skilled at lying that she started to believe her own myth. By 2016, Anna Delvey wasn't just a persona. She was a full-time identity. And New York, ever eager to crown its next self-made icon, handed her the crown. But here's the truth no one talks about. Anna didn't con the city. The city conned itself. We live in a world where image is currency, where a viral Instagram post can replace a resume, where a startup founder's vibe matters more than their revenue. Anna didn't invent this system. She exploited it. She saw that, in the age of social media, reality is negotiable. A photo with a private jet, a caption about closing a deal, a well-placed lie in a DM. These are the tools of modern mythology. And Anna was a master storyteller. She didn't just want money. She wanted belonging. To her, the con wasn't about the $200,000 she stole. It was about proving she was worthy of the life she'd fabricated. Yet the cracks were always there. The unpaid invoices, the evasive answers, the way her eyes flickered when someone asked about her family. But people ignored them. Why? Because they wanted to believe. They wanted to be part of her story. They wanted to think that in America, anyone, even a mysterious European heiress with a vague accent, could rise from nothing to everything. Anna didn't just sell a lie. She sold a dream. And dreams are harder to question than facts. This is where her story begins. Not with the crime, but with the need. The need to be seen. The need to be powerful. The need to escape the ordinary. Anna Delvey wasn't born a fraud. She became one because the world rewarded her for it. And that's the most dangerous part of her story. We taught her how. Every time we prioritized appearance over authenticity, every time we valued a highlight reel over the messy truth, we gave her permission to keep lying. Pretending until you believe isn't just a con artist's tactic. It's a mirror held up to all of us. So ask yourself, what are you pretending to be? What lies have you told yourself to fit in, to succeed, to feel enough? Because the line between ambition and deception is thinner than you think. And once you cross it, there's no going back. Anna Delvey didn't just wear expensive clothes. She lived them. A $2,000 Celine coat wasn't an outfit. It was armor. A $1,500 Prada handbag wasn't an accessory. It was a weapon. In New York's social hierarchy, what you wear isn't about comfort. It's about currency. And Anna understood this better than anyone. She knew that in a city where billionaires judge you by your shoes, looking the part was 90% of the battle. Looks aren't just skin deep. They're currency. She turned this phrase into a religion. Her Instagram was a masterpiece of calculated deception. Every photo was a puzzle piece in her grand illusion. Sipping champagne at exclusive rooftop bars, posing with art collectors at gallery openings, lounging in hotel suites with hashtags like #blessed and #livingmybestlife. But behind the filters, the reality was stark. Those private jet photos, taken on commercial flights, those penthouse views, staged in rented Airbnb listings. Yet no one questioned it. Why? Because in 2016, social media had already rewired our brains to equate visibility with validity. If it's online, it must be real. Anna didn't invent this delusion. She weaponized it. But her image wasn't just visual. It was auditory. She adopted a vague European accent, switching between German and French phrases to sound cosmopolitan. She name-dropped billionaires like they were old friends. She spoke in buzzwords, disruption, synergy, vision, until even her closest allies couldn't tell if she was brilliant or full of it. And that was the point. In a world drowning in noise, ambiguity becomes authority. The less clear she was, the more people assumed she must know something they didn't. This is where modern society fails itself. We've been trained to trust the surface. A LinkedIn profile with 500+ connections feels more credible than a handshake. A TikTok influencer with 1 million followers seems more trustworthy than a local business owner. Anna exploited this flaw ruthlessly. She knew that, in the attention economy, perception is everything. So she curated every detail. The way she held her wine glass, pinky raised. The way she signed her name, a dramatic flourish. Even the way she laughed, low, throaty, like she was sharing a secret. These weren't quirks, they were tactics. And the city rewarded her. Restaurants gave her VIP tables. Hotels upgraded her rooms. Investors offered her loans based on vibes. Why? Because we've normalized the idea that if it looks expensive, it must be valuable. But here's the catch. Image is fragile. It only works as long as no one asks for receipts. And Anna's receipts were all fake. Yet the real tragedy isn't that she lied. It's that we wanted to believe. We've built a culture where faking it isn't just accepted, it's celebrated. Think of the influencers who Photoshop their lives, the CEOs who bluff their way through earnings calls, the politicians who rewrite history with a tweet. Anna Delvey didn't emerge from a vacuum. She was born from our collective obsession with the appearance of success. So here's the question. What are you projecting to the world? Are you curating a life or living one? Because the moment you prioritize image over truth, you're not just fooling others, you're fooling yourself. And that's the most dangerous con of all. The Sahara Desert doesn't forgive. And on that scorching June day in 2017, as Anna Delvey's luxury Moroccan villa reservation evaporated alongside $62,000 of Rachel Williams' savings, the truth became undeniable. This wasn't a mistake. It was a masterpiece of calculated deception. Anna hadn't merely forgotten to pay the bill. She'd engineered an entire ecosystem of delayed consequences, where every unpaid invoice, every bounced check, every broken promise was a thread in a tapestry designed to buy her time. This was the core of her genius. Debt buys time, but trust buys loyalty. And in New York's glittering underworld, loyalty was the only currency that mattered. Anna operated on a principle as old as con artistry itself. Never let the mark see the trap closing. She'd book a $10,000 a night suite at Marrakesh's La Mamounia, promising her companions that her Luxembourg foundation would cover expenses next week. When the bill came due, a sudden banking delay, a wire transfer glitch, a family emergency requiring immediate funds. Each excuse was delivered with such calm authority that doubt never surfaced, until it was too late. Her victims weren't victims at all in her mind. They were investors in her grand narrative. And like any savvy entrepreneur, she kept them hooked with the promise of future returns. "Once my foundation liquidates," she'd murmur over champagne, "you'll all be part of my inner circle." The allure wasn't just money, it was belonging. In a city where exclusivity is power, Anna sold VIP access to a world that didn't exist. Consider the $40 million mansion scheme. Anna didn't just say she'd buy it. She lived the fantasy for months. She toured Hampton's estates with real estate agents, discussing renovation budgets and staff quarters with terrifying specificity. She drafted fake letters from Deutsche Bank Luxembourg, confirming her $67 million line of credit. When the seller demanded proof, she'd schedule a private banking meeting, then ghost for weeks, claiming international regulators were reviewing documents. By the time suspicion bloomed, she'd already moved on to her next target, leaving behind a trail of unpaid retainers and shattered egos. This wasn't improvisation. It was orchestration. Every delay, every evasion, every carefully timed disappearance served one purpose: to stretch the moment of truth just far enough that walking away felt like losing the dream. But the real horror lies in what her victims did to keep the illusion alive. Rachel Williams didn't just pay Anna's $62,000 tab in Morocco. She begged her friends to cover it, mortgaging her own credibility to protect Anna's story. A Wall Street executive lent her $15,000 after a single lunch, convinced her vision for an arts empire was worth the risk. Even when Anna vanished mid-conversation at Soho House, leaving behind half-finished cocktails and unpaid tabs, people rationalized it. She's just busy closing deals. Why? Because fear of confrontation is the con artist's greatest ally. Admitting you'd been duped meant admitting you'd been gullible. And in a city built on ruthless ambition, that stigma was worse than financial loss. So they waited. They accommodated. They rewrote red flags as eccentricities of genius. Anna didn't steal their money. She weaponized their pride. This is where modern America fails its citizens. We've normalized the hustle to such extremes that any delay in payment is framed as disruption, not deceit. Think of startups that burn cash for years while promising future profits. Influencers who monetize later through vague brand deals. Even politicians who operate on perpetual campaign mode, trading today's credibility for tomorrow's votes. Anna didn't invent this playbook. She studied it in real time on Bloomberg and Instagram. Her genius was recognizing that in an economy built on potential, the line between visionary and fraudster is drawn by whoever controls the narrative. And she controlled hers with chilling precision. The Moroccan fiasco wasn't her first near miss. It was her most brazen. Weeks earlier, she tried the same stunt at New York's The Standard High Line, booking a $1,200 a night suite for foundation meetings. When the bill hit $22,000, she promised payment by Friday. Friday came. Friday went. The hotel's manager confronted her in the lobby, receipt in hand. Anna didn't flinch. She placed a hand on his arm, lowered her voice. "My family's lawyers are handling a $300 million estate dispute. Do you want to be the reason I lose access to my funds?" He backed down, not because he believed her, but because the idea of her wealth felt more real than the paper in his hand. Debt buys time, but trust buys loyalty. And loyalty, once earned, is nearly impossible to revoke. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Anna succeeded because she mirrored our deepest cultural delusion. We worship the idea of success so fiercely that we'd rather believe a lie than admit we misjudged someone. When her Instagram showed her sipping espresso at Café de Flore in Paris, no one asked why an heir to billions traveled coach. When she claimed her foundation didn't deal in cash, no one questioned why she always forgot her wallet. We wanted her story to be true because it confirmed our own fantasies. That in America, anyone can transcend their origins through sheer force of will. Anna didn't con individuals. She conned the American dream itself. And that's why her collapse felt so personal to those who backed her. When the police finally arrested her at the Standard in October 2017, not for theft, but for theft of services, it wasn't just Anna who was exposed. It was everyone who'd ever pretended to be more than they were. The financier who lied about his bonus. The artist who faked gallery connections. The socialite who rented her designer wardrobe. Anna's crime wasn't stealing $200,000. It was holding up a mirror to our collective performance of success and showing us how thin the glass really is. So ask yourself, what promises are you making to buy your time? What debts, financial, emotional, moral, are you stretching to keep a dream alive? Because the long con doesn't end with handcuffs. It ends when you realize you've been conning yourself all along. And by then, the Sahara is already swallowing your footprints. Reality doesn't announce itself. It doesn't send invoices or schedule meetings. It arrives quietly, through a banker's furrowed brow, a hotel clerk's hesitant cough, the sudden silence when your name comes up at a dinner party. For Anna Delvey, reality began on a Tuesday in October 2017, not with sirens, but with a single sentence. Your account has a negative balance of $18,000. The Citibank manager spoke softly, almost apologetically, as if he were the one committing a crime. Anna's carefully constructed world didn't shatter that day. It evaporated. Because the brutal truth about lies is this: every lie has an expiration date stamped in blood. And Anna's was overdue. The unraveling started with the small things. A $400 hotel bill at the Bowery Hotel suddenly overlooked. A $1,200 dinner at Carbone where she vanished mid-dessert. At first, these were dismissed as eccentric heiress behavior. The charming quirks of someone so wealthy, money was beneath her notice. But then came the $62,000 Moroccan disaster. Then the $22,000 standard high line tab. Then the $100,000 wire transfer that never materialized for a foundation investment. Pattern recognition is human instinct, and New York's elite finally connected the dots. This wasn't forgetfulness. It was fraud. The moment Rachel Williams filed her police report, detailing how Anna had promised to reimburse her for the Morocco trip, then blocked her number, the dam broke. Dozens of others came forward. Art dealers, hotel managers, even a private jet broker. Each story followed the same arc. Charisma, commitment, collapse. Anna hadn't just stolen money. She'd stolen trust, the one resource New York treats as more precious than gold. What's chilling isn't how she was caught, but why it took so long. Her victims weren't naive college students. They were Wall Street veterans, gallery owners, lawyers, people trained to spot risk. Yet they ignored the evidence because desperation blinds even the sharpest minds. Consider the financier who lent her $50,000 after one meeting. He later admitted, "I thought if I got in early on her foundation, I'd be set for life." Or the art dealer who fronted her $15,000 for gallery deposits, convinced she'd become his golden ticket to high society. These weren't fools. They were hungry. In a city where fortunes are made overnight, the fear of missing out, FOMO, overrides logic. Anna weaponized this hunger, dangling access to her empire like a carrot on a stick. "Invest now," she'd whisper, "and you'll be my CFO when we IPO." In 2017, that promise was more intoxicating than cocaine. The psychology of her downfall reveals a dark American truth. We want to believe in the impossible. When Anna claimed her foundation managed billions, no one demanded audited financials. Because in the age of crypto millionaires and viral startups, actual proof feels outdated. We've been conditioned to trust vibes over verification. Think of Theranos Elizabeth Holmes, who raised $700 million on charisma alone. Or Fire Festival's Billy McFarland, who sold $12,000 glamping packages with no festival in sight. Anna wasn't an anomaly. She was a symptom of a culture that values potential over proof, where disruption is code for, "I haven't figured out how this works yet." Her genius was recognizing that, in America, the appearance of success grants temporary immunity from scrutiny. And she exploited that immunity until reality, cold, unblinking, and utterly indifferent to her story, forced its way in. The arrest itself was almost mundane. No dramatic chase. No last stand. Just Anna, sipping espresso at the Standard's lobby cafe, when two detectives approached. She didn't resist, didn't beg, didn't even seem surprised. Later, in court documents, she'd claim she never intended to defraud, as if intent mattered when the damage was done. But the real tragedy wasn't her arrest. It was the silence that followed. Friends who dined with her weeks earlier suddenly couldn't recall meeting her. Investors who championed her vision scrubbed her from their LinkedIn. In a city built on reputation, abandonment is the ultimate punishment. Because once the illusion cracks, reality doesn't just expose the liar, it erases them. This is the lesson no one discusses. Lies don't just destroy the deceiver, they poison the deceived. Rachel Williams lost $62,000, but she also lost her sense of judgment, her trust in her own instincts, her belief that the world operates on basic decency. The financier who lent $50,000 didn't just lose money. He lost the confidence to take any risk ever again. Anna's true crime wasn't theft. It was the destruction of faith, the invisible currency that keeps society functioning. When we stop believing promises have meaning, we stop making them. We stop investing. We stop connecting. We become prisoners of our own suspicion. So here's your wake-up call. What expiration date is stamped on your lies? Not the big, criminal ones, but the small deceptions we all tell, "I'm fine. I'll pay you back next week." This project will change everything. Every unkept promise chips away at the trust that binds us. Anna Delvey didn't fall because she was caught. She fell because the weight of her lies became heavier than the dream they supported. And when reality finally collides with your fiction, it won't ask for an explanation. It will simply say, "Here, now, pay up." The courtroom wasn't a courtroom to Anna Delvey. It was her final luxury suite, a stage where she'd perform one last act of defiance. October 2019. New York Supreme Court. The air smelled of stale coffee and desperation. Anna sat perfectly poised in a $1,200 Saint Laurent blazer, her nails manicured, her hair swept into a flawless chignon. To the untrained eye, she looked like a wronged heiress, not a convicted felon facing 4 to 12 years for grand larceny. But the truth was already in the room, silent and suffocating. Every lie has an expiration date stamped in blood, and Anna's had bled out months ago. It began with the receipts. Literally. Prosecutors unfurled a tapestry of deception, 27 pages of unpaid hotel bills, forged bank statements, and text messages where Anna promised Rachel Williams, "I'll wire you $62,000 by Friday," while her actual bank account held $63.72. Each document was a hammer blow to her myth. But Anna didn't flinch. When the judge asked if she understood the charges, she replied with icy precision, "I believe there's been a misunderstanding. My foundation's funds were temporarily frozen due to regulatory issues." The room gasped. This wasn't denial. It was audacity. Even as evidence mounted, she treated the trial like another networking event, adjusting her blouse, smiling at jurors, scribbling notes in a leather-bound moleskine. Even under scrutiny, confidence never wavers. It becomes armor. Then came the victims. Rachel Williams took the stand first, her voice trembling as she described the Morocco trip, the private jet she'd booked, the $1,500 per night villa, Anna's promise to pay from her Luxembourg account. When prosecutors played Anna's voicemail, "Rachel, darling, my bankers are being difficult. Just cover it for now." The courtroom felt the shift. This wasn't a financial dispute. It was psychological warfare. Anna had weaponized Rachel's ambition, dangling access to elite circles like a carrot. "I thought if I helped her, I'd become part of her world," Rachel admitted, tears cutting through her mascara. But her world didn't exist. The real horror? Rachel wasn't alone. A Wall Street broker testified about the $15,000 investment he'd fronted for Anna's arts club, only to find her shell company was registered to a P.O. box in Queens. A hotel manager described chasing her through Soho after she skipped a $22,000 bill, shouting, "Do you know who I am?" as she hailed a cab. Each story followed the same arc. Charisma, commitment, collapse. The pattern was undeniable. But the most chilling moment came when Anna took the stand herself. For 7 hours, she spun a new narrative, claiming she was a visionary misunderstood by a jealous system, that her foundation was real but hampered by international bureaucracy. When the prosecutor confronted her with a fake Deutsche Bank letter she'd created, she shrugged. Mistakes happen in high finance. When shown her handwritten notes listing how to fake a bank statement, she blinked slowly. That's not my handwriting. The dissonance was staggering. Here was a woman who'd built an empire of lies, now trapped in a labyrinth of her own making. Yet she never broke. Not once. She answered every question with the calm of someone who'd rehearsed this moment for years. Even under scrutiny, confidence never wavers. It becomes a religion. The jury deliberated for 11 hours. In those hours, New York held its breath. Would they see a criminal or a victim of her own ambition? The verdict landed like a gavel. Guilty on 8 counts. As the judge read the sentence for to 12 years, Anna finally cracked. Not with tears, not with rage, with disbelief. She stared at the jury, her mouth slightly open, as if they'd just spoken in a language she didn't understand. How could this happen? Her eyes seemed to ask. I was so close. That look of utter shock that reality had dared to interrupt her fantasy was her true confession. The con hadn't ended with her arrest. It had ended the moment she stopped believing her own story. But justice isn't closure. It's a scar. Rachel Williams left the courtroom physically free but emotionally chained. She'd won her $62,000 civil suit against Anna, but the money never came because Anna had nothing. I got a judgment, not justice, she'd later write. The financier who lent $50,000 became paranoid, triple-checking every client's ID. The art dealer stopped trusting anyone without audited financials. Anna's crime wasn't theft. It was the destruction of trust itself, the invisible mortar holding society together. When we stop believing promises have weight, we stop making them. We stop investing. We stop connecting. We become prisoners of suspicion. This is where America's delusion fractures. We tell ourselves justice is a clean reset button. Lock her up and the wound heals. But the truth is messier. Anna's trial exposed a cultural rot. We reward the performance of success so fiercely that we ignore the absence of substance. Think of Elizabeth Holmes in her black turtleneck, promising blood tests from a single drop. Think of Sam Bankman-Fried tweeting, "I'm here to help," as FTX collapsed. Anna wasn't an outlier. She was a mirror. We wanted her story to be true because it confirmed our deepest fantasy. That in America, anyone can transcend reality through sheer force of will. Her trial wasn't about one woman's lies. It was about our collective willingness to be lied to. The aftermath was almost poetic. Anna's Instagram, once a shrine to luxury, now showed prison jumpsuits and commissary coffee. Her followers didn't unfollow, they mourned. Comments flooded in. She's still iconic. The system failed her. Even behind bars, she'd turned her downfall into content. But the real tragedy played out off-camera. Rachel Williams quit her job in publishing, haunted by the question, how did I miss the signs? The financier developed anxiety attacks before meetings. Trust, once broken, doesn't heal. It calcifies into fear. Justice may prevail, but scars remain. They linger in the hesitation before lending money, the second-guessing of a stranger's smile, the quiet voice that whispers, "Is this real?" Here's the unspoken lesson. Reality doesn't announce itself with sirens. It arrives through a banker's sigh, a friend's avoided gaze, the sudden silence when your name comes up at dinner. Anna's downfall began not in court, but in the thousand small moments she chose the lie over the truth. The unpaid bill she dismissed, the forged document she emailed, the promise she knew she'd never keep. Each was a stitch in the noose. And when reality finally came for her, it didn't knock. Kicked the door down. So ask yourself, what small lies are you stitching into your noose? The "I'm fine" when you're drowning? The "I'll pay you back" with no plan to do so? The "this will change everything" for a project built on sand? Every lie has an expiration date stamped in blood. And when yours arrives, reality won't ask for an explanation. It will simply say, "Here, now, pay up." The gavel's crack echoed like a gunshot. October 2019. New York Supreme Court. Anna Delvey sat ramrod straight, her $1,200 St. Laurent blazer crisp against the courtroom's institutional gray. To the public, this was a trial about theft. To Anna, it was her final audition. "I'm not a criminal," she told the New York Times weeks earlier. "I'm a misunderstood visionary." And for 11 days, she played that role with terrifying conviction. Even under scrutiny, confidence never wavers. It becomes the last fortress of the fallen. Prosecutors opened with receipts, literal ones. Page after page of unpaid bills. $22,000 at the Standard High Line, $62,000 in Morocco, $100,000 in promised wire transfers that never materialized. Each document was a brick in the wall closing around her. But Anna didn't shrink. When the prosecutor asked about a fake Deutsche Bank letter she'd created, she leaned into the microphone, her voice dripping with aristocratic disdain. "Banking is complex. Mistakes happen." The room froze. This wasn't denial. It was rebranding. She transformed fraud into regulatory challenges, theft into cash flow delays. In an era of crypto scams and startup vaporware, her defense was perversely modern. If everyone's faking it, am I really the criminal? Then came the victims. Rachel Williams stepped to the stand, her hands trembling as she described the Morocco trip. The private jet, the villa, Anna's promise to pay from her Luxembourg foundation. When prosecutors played Anna's voicemail, "Rachel, darling, just cover it for now?" The courtroom felt the shift. This wasn't about money. It was about the silent cost of seeking validation. Rachel had funded Anna's fantasy because she craved entry into a world of power and glamour. "I thought if I helped her, I'd become part of her circle," she admitted, tears cutting through her makeup. But her circle was a mirage. The real horror? Rachel wasn't alone. A Wall Street broker testified about the $15,000 he'd lent Anna for her arts club, only to find her company registered to a P.O. box in Queens. A hotel manager described chasing her through Soho, shouting, "Do you know who I am?" as she fled a $22,000 bill. Each story followed the same arc: ambition, access, abandonment. But the trial's turning point came when Anna took the stand. For 7 hours, she spun a new myth, claiming her foundation was real but hampered by international bureaucracy, that she'd always intended to pay. When confronted with her handwritten notes titled, "How to Fake a Bank Statement," she blinked slowly. "That's not my handwriting." When asked why she'd used a fake name, she shrugged. "Delvey sounds more European. It's branding." The dissonance was staggering. Here was a woman who'd built an empire of lies, now trapped in a labyrinth of her own making. Yet she never broke. Not once. She answered every question with the calm of someone who'd rehearsed this moment for years. Even under scrutiny, confidence never wavers. It becomes a religion. The prosecution's masterstroke came with Exhibit 47, Anna's private Instagram. Not the curated at Anna Delvey feed, but her private account, filled with screenshots of fake bank statements, notes titled, "How to Act Rich," and messages to friends. "Tell them my foundation is liquidating." The dam broke. Jurors leaned forward, squinting at the evidence. This wasn't a visionary. This was a con artist with a spreadsheet. When the prosecutor asked, "Did you ever have $60 million?" Anna's mask slipped, just for a second. Her eyes darted left, the universal tell of deception. "I had access to funds," she murmured. The room exhaled. The lie had finally collapsed under its own weight. The jury deliberated for 11 hours. In those hours, New York held its breath. Would they see a criminal or a victim of her own ambition? The verdict landed like a gavel. Guilty on 8 counts. As the judge sentenced her to 4 to 12 years, Anna finally cracked. Not with tears, but with disbelief. She stared at the jury, her mouth slightly open, as if they'd spoken in a language she didn't understand. How could this happen? Her eyes seemed to ask. I was so close. That look of utter shock that reality had dared to interrupt her fantasy was her true confession. The con hadn't ended with her arrest. It had ended the moment she stopped believing her own story. But justice isn't closure. It's a scar. Rachel Williams left the courtroom with a $62,000 civil judgment, but Anna had nothing to pay it with. I got a piece of paper, not justice, she'd later write. The financier who lent $50,000 developed anxiety attacks before meetings. The art dealer stopped trusting anyone without audited financials. Anna's crime wasn't theft. It was the destruction of trust itself, the invisible mortar holding society together. When we stop believing promises have weight, we stop making them. We stop investing. We stop connecting. Justice may prevail, but scars remain. They linger in the hesitation before lending money, the second-guessing of a stranger's smile, the quiet voice that whispers, "Is this real?" This is the unspoken truth of every trial. The courtroom isn't where justice happens. It's where we pretend reality can be contained. Anna's trial exposed a cultural rot. We reward the performance of success so fiercely that we ignore the absence of substance. Think of Elizabeth Holmes in her turtleneck, promising blood tests from a single drop. Think of Sam Bankman-Fried tweeting, "I'm here to help," as FTX imploded. Anna wasn't an outlier. She was a mirror. We wanted her story to be true because it confirmed our deepest fantasy. That in America, anyone can transcend reality through sheer force of will. Her trial wasn't about one woman's lies. It was about our collective willingness to be lied to. The aftermath was almost poetic. Anna's Instagram, once a shrine to luxury, now showed prison jumpsuits and commissary coffee. Her followers didn't unfollow, they mourned. Comments flooded in. She's still iconic. The system failed her. Even behind bars, she turned her downfall into content. But the real tragedy played out off-camera. Rachel Williams quit her job, haunted by, "How did I miss the signs?" The financier developed insomnia. Trust, once broken, doesn't heal. It calcifies into fear. So here's your reckoning. What promises are you making that you can't keep? The "I'll pay you back" with no plan? The "this will change everything" for a project built on sand? Even under scrutiny, confidence never wavers until it does. And when it collapses, the courtroom won't save you. Only truth can. But truth, unlike confidence, doesn't need an audience to exist. It simply is. And it's waiting for you in the quiet moments, when the performance ends and the real work begins. The email arrived at 3:17 a.m. Rachel Williams stared at the screen, her fingers numb. Per our settlement agreement, Anna Sorokin has $0 in assets. Judgment uncollectible. $62,000. 2 years of her life. A friendship shattered. But the real theft wasn't the money. It was the quiet voice now whispering in her ear every time someone smiled too warmly, every time a deal felt too good. Trust once broken takes years to rebuild, if ever. Rachel wasn't just Anna Delvey's victim. She was her warning label. And New York's elite were too busy laughing at the scandal to read it. Rachel's story is the autopsy of modern gullibility. A Vanity Fair photo editor with a 6-figure salary. She met Anna at a Soho House mixer in 2016. Anna arrived draped in a vintage Chanel coat, name-dropping Guggenheim trustees like old friends. She spoke of her $60 million foundation with such bored certainty that Rachel's skepticism evaporated. "I thought she was the real thing," Rachel later confessed. Her confidence was her collateral. That's the first lesson. Confidence isn't proof. It's camouflage. Anna weaponized the very trait we mistake for credibility. When she promised to reimburse Rachel's $62,000 Morocco trip, "My foundation wires internationally. It takes 72 hours." Rachel didn't demand bank details. She wanted to believe. Why? Because Anna offered what New York trades in like currency: belonging. In a city where exclusivity equals power, Anna sold VIP access to a world that didn't exist. Rachel paid for the illusion with her trust, and her trust paid Anna's rent. But Rachel's mistake wasn't unique. It was textbook. Consider the financier who lent Anna $50,000 after one lunch. He'd built his career on due diligence. Yet when Anna murmured, "I'll make you CFO of my arts club," he skipped the background check. "I was chasing the dream," he admitted in court, "not the documents." This is the second lesson. Desperation blinds even the sharpest minds. Anna didn't target fools. She targeted the hungry. People so starved for connection, status, or a piece of the next big thing that they'd mortgage their judgment for a seat at her table. She studied their hunger like a predator. The art dealer craving gallery prestige. The socialite craving Instagram clout. The entrepreneur craving a visionary mentor. To them, Anna wasn't a liar. She was a ladder. And ladders don't need to be real if they promise to lift you up. The third lesson cuts deepest. Red flags aren't ignored, they're romanticized. Rachel saw the warning signs. The banking delays that stretched for months. The vague answers about her family. The time Anna vanished mid-conversation at the Standard, leaving behind unpaid cocktails. But Rachel rewrote them as eccentricities. Geniuses are scattered, she told herself. Her mind is on bigger things. This is America's fatal flaw. We've turned red flags into plot points. Think of Theranos investors who dismissed Elizabeth Holmes' secrecy as disruptive genius. Or Fire Festival attendees who ignored Billy McFarland's sketchy contracts for the vibe. Anna didn't invent this delusion. She exploited our cultural obsession with the myth of success. We'd rather believe a lie about someone else than confront the truth about ourselves. We wanted to be part of her story. Now watch the aftermath. Rachel didn't just lose money. She lost her compass. She quit publishing, terrified to trust her own instincts. At her new job, she triple-checks every client's ID. She flinches when colleagues mention luxury trips. The financier developed panic attacks before meetings. He now demands audited financials from baristas. The art dealer stopped taking calls from visionaries without proof of funds. This is the hidden cost of Anna's crime. Trust isn't just broken, it's recalibrated. Victims don't just become cautious. They become prisoners of suspicion, seeing con artists in every handshake, every promise, every too-perfect opportunity. The world doesn't feel safer. Feels like a minefield. But here's the twist. Anna's victims weren't passive. They enabled her. Rachel booked the private jet to Morocco knowing Anna had skipped 3 hotel bills. The financier wired $50,000 after Anna missed 2 payment deadlines. Why? Because the promise of reward always outweighs the fear of loss, until it's too late. We've normalized this gamble. Startups burn cash for years on future potential. Influencers sell brand deals with no brands attached. Politicians trade today's credibility for tomorrow's votes. Anna didn't con individuals. She conned the American dream's core lie. If you want it badly enough, reality will bend. And when reality snapped back, it didn't just break her. It broke everyone who'd bent with her. So let's dissect the real crime scene. Not the unpaid bills. Not the forged documents. The moment each victim chose ambition over evidence. Rachel saw Anna's fake bank statement but told herself, banks make mistakes. The financier noticed Anna's shell company was registered to a Queens P.O. box but rationalized. That's how billionaires hide assets. This is the killer instinct we all possess. We'd rather believe a lie that flatters us than a truth that humiliates us. Anna understood this better than Freud. She didn't just sell dreams. She sold self-delusion. And her victims bought it because the alternative, admitting they'd misjudged someone, felt like admitting they weren't as smart, as connected, as worthy as they pretended to be. The aftermath is a ghost story. Rachel still gets tagged in memes. Anna Delvey's #1 fan over photos of their Morocco trip. The financier's LinkedIn shows no new connections since 2017. The art dealer's gallery closed last year. Lack of investor trust, the sign said. Anna's legacy isn't her prison sentence. It's the silence that followed her downfall. The unmade deals, the unspoken invitations, the careers derailed by a single misplaced trust. Trust once broken takes years to rebuild, if ever, and for some it never rebuilds at all. Calcifies into fear. It becomes the tax we pay for daring to believe. Your turn. Look at your own life. That colleague who forgot to pay you back? The friend who always has a big check coming? The business partner whose promises sound too perfect? Red flags exist for a reason. Don't ignore them. Not because you'll lose money, though you might. Because every time you dismiss a warning sign, you teach yourself that truth is negotiable. And once you believe that, the con artist doesn't need to lie anymore. You'll do it for them. Ambition isn't the problem. It's the hunger beneath it. Anna Delvey didn't wake up wanting to steal $200,000. She woke up wanting to be seen. To be the woman who didn't need to prove her worth, because the world already bowed to it. That's the seduction of the American dream. Ambition unchecked becomes destruction. And Anna didn't just cross the line. She built a mansion on the other side and invited everyone to the grand opening. Trace her hunger to its source. Born Anna Sorokin in Russia, raised in Germany, she grew up watching Sex and the City reruns, a blueprint for a life where Manolo Blahnik solved problems and brunch was a sport. At Vogue internships, she saw real heiresses glide through offices in Kashmir, their bank accounts invisible as oxygen. But Anna had student debt, a tiny Brooklyn apartment, a resume with no foundation to back it. So she did what America teaches us to do. Fake it till you make it. Except Anna never intended to make it. She intended to become it. She didn't want money. She wanted the weightlessness money provides, the freedom from consequences, the halo of respectability, the ability to say, my lawyers will handle it, and watch the world step aside. Ambition unchecked becomes destruction, not because it's evil, but because it confuses being with appearing. This is where Anna's story mirrors ours. We're taught to chase hustle culture like salvation. The CEO who lies about revenue to secure funding. The influencer who photoshops poverty into aesthetic struggle. The politician who trades truth for votes. Anna didn't invent this playbook. She studied it in real time on Instagram and Bloomberg. Her genius was recognizing that in America, the line between visionary and fraudster is drawn by whoever controls the narrative. When she told a banker, my family's lawyers are handling a $300 million estate dispute, she wasn't lying.